That's House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, Republican from Minnesota. Congressman, thanks for being back on the show.
Good to be with you, Haley.
Let me start here with that's it. I've heard it all. All good. Let me start with sort of your shutdown meter watch. And I understand you have a lot of thoughts about it, but is the government, like where we are now, is the government going to shut down? What's going to avoid this at midnight? Anything?
Yeah, Chuck Schumer and Democrats voting for the CR that the House has already passed. This is a nonpartisan CR, a 7-week extension to allow Republicans and Democrats who, by the way, Hallie, I don't think a lot of viewers understand that probably since the first time since 2014, the House and the Senate both made motions to go to conference with each other. They're close on the first 3 appropriations bills. This gives them a little time to wrap that up. The goal is to get back to a regular order appropriations process. And literally, the nonpartisan CR that was passed is current funding levels. This is something that all of the Senate Democrats, or the Senate Democrats and Chuck Schumer, actually supported just 6 months ago, and more importantly, that they all voted on the exact same thing 13 times under Biden. So the way you avoid it is you got to have 7 or more Democrats voting with the Republicans tonight to pass the short-term CR.
And do you think, I'll ask you, I want to follow up in a second, but you don't have any sense there's 7 Democrats right now, right? Our count, I can only think of 1, but.
I think there's at least 6 or 7 right now that have a very difficult choice. I mean, do they vote against this? And when federal employees are out of work and federal contractors are out of money and people can't get into state parks and can't get the services that they expect, they're going to go home and say, I had a chance to keep it open by keeping current funding levels with no Republican teasers in there, nothing. I gave the Republicans nothing. Or do I go home and say, because Chuck Schumer is scared of losing his job, I decided to support Chuck Schumer at your expense? I think,
but here's the thing with that, Congressman. Can I just ask you this, though? Because when you look at because I've heard you say this. I know you did our friends over at CNBC earlier today, and you called this a, quote, Schumer shutdown here. But when you look at some of the numbers, look at the new New York Times poll out. Like, a lot of Americans blame all of you. A third of Americans blame both you, Republicans, and Democrats. They're done with it, right? Like, they blame everybody involved. Like, how much is that kind of blowback a concern for you? Because I obviously, you've said what you're saying here, but to a lot of Americans, they just look at Congress, they look at the building you're in, and they go, ugh, enough.
Well, Hallie, if you're talking about the New York Times, you're not talking about a lot of Americans. Let's talk about reality. Reality here. No, I disagree with you totally. You pick whatever poll you want. What I'm telling you is that New York Times does not speak for America. And what Americans know is House Republicans have done their job. We have a current funding level bill in place. Chuck Schumer, who has said you do not hold the government hostage in these things, is doing exactly that. And why? Because he's afraid of losing his job and he's trying to play politics with his base instead of putting the American people first. I'm telling you right now, if the government shuts down at 12:01 tonight, it's because of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate. And Americans are smarter than the New York Times and all these other political elites give them credit for. They'll understand this. This is going to land right in Chuck Schumer's lap. It is the Chuck Schumer shutdown.
Congressman, the literal last thing I want to do is get into a discussion in the weeds of New York Times polling. But it is I will just say it is other polls beyond the New York Times. Marist, for example, says even more Americans would blame Republicans. I just want to make that point. I don't need to litigate it with you, but I feel compelled to point that out. Let me ask you this, because
with no response from me, even though you know that the polls are going to say whatever they say based on the question that's asked. There's so much more to these polls, and you rely on the New York Times. You might as well say the Washington Post. They both are completely skewed.
I'm not relying on the time. I'm just pointing. It's just a data point. We could have picked a million of them, and I will. We'll put them up in just a second here. But let me ask you this, because I've covered a lot of shutdowns, right? I mean, I was there, obviously, for the 2019 one. 2018 was short. You've been through this. How do we get out of this cycle? You want to change the fiscal calendar. Is that enough, or is that just a Band-Aid?
The bottom line is you're in a place where we're finally moving back towards a regular order appropriations process. The House and the Senate both made motions to go to conference. Hallie, I don't think that's happened since 2014. That was done the second week of September. They're very close, the conference committee, on wrapping up the first 3 bills with another 3 ready to go. This is giving them time to finish that appropriations process. Nobody in the CR from the House is asking for anything more, anything less. It is a flat spending deal that keeps spending levels right where they're at. No partisan issues involved. And what do we get in response? We've got Chuck Schumer spouting about how this is wrong, and he wants $1.5 trillion more in spending. He wants to wind down or wind back the reforms we did to Medicaid because apparently he and his colleagues want to see 1.4 million illegals have taxpayer-funded health care again.
Well, the Democrats push back on that. They say, obviously, it's illegal to give.
They can push back all they want, Hallie. Look at the bill they filed in the Senate. It's right in there. They want to undo the reforms to Medicaid, and they want to allow that 1.4 million illegals to go back on taxpayer-funded health care. They want $500 million to go to radical news outlets. They want to take $50 billion away from rural health care, and they want to fund billions of climate projects in foreign countries. That's not negotiating. That's foolish. This should be voted on tonight.
That's just not true, Congressman. Top Democrats say this issue of undocumented immigrants getting health care is simply not true. There's nothing in the paper that says it.
Respectfully, look at their bill.
So are you? Are you talking about lawful presence?
I am.
What are you referring to?
Take a look at what they're going to vote on tonight. That's exactly.
Is there anybody beyond DACA recipients who you would put in that category based on the text?
Take a look at the bill they filed tonight. What they want to do is the Medicaid reform we put in place to make sure that the verification happens, that Medicaid is actually going to the people it was intended to and not to illegal aliens who it's not intended for. They want to unwind that. It's in their bill, Hallie.
Again, we'll have a top Democrat joining us next hour, Congressman Emmer. Really appreciate you being on. You got a lot. Are you going to be in town the next couple of weeks then, right? You're here for the duration?
Well, hopefully they come to their senses and they fund the government tonight, and we can put the American people first and get moving on.
Congressman Emmer, thanks for being on. Really appreciate your time. Let's get you over the phone.